holiday gatherings are supposed to be cozy and grateful. Instead, some families are sending Venmo invoices for toilet paper and calling 911 over vegan ham. In this video, we're counting down 69 of the dumbest, pettiest holiday complaints ever made. The kind that make your own dysfunctional relatives look like saints. 1. Imagine showing up to your aunt's house for a festive feast, enjoying the ham, and then getting a Venmo request 3 days later titled, "Holiday Experience Fee." One guest actually reported that their hostess aunt itemized the bill down to the toilet paper usage and a cooking labor surcharge of $15 an hour. She claimed that since she wasn't a professional chef, she deserved hazard pay for dealing with a raw turkey, and if they didn't pay up, they would be reported to the Family Credit Bureau, also known as Grandma. 2. Aesthetic obsession reached a fever pitch when a mother-in-law had a full meltdown because the mashed potatoes were the wrong shade of white to match her Winter Wonderland tablescape. She actually filed a verbal complaint with her son, stating that the creamy off-white of the potatoes clashed aggressively with the Arctic snow napkins and demanded the dish be removed immediately. Apparently, tasting good was secondary to ensuring the Instagram aesthetic remained uncompromised by a rogue root vegetable that didn't understand color theory. 3. You usually expect to bring a side dish or maybe a bottle of wine. But one Reddit user shared a horror story where the host complained that guests arrived empty-handed regarding furniture. The invitation apparently implied BYOC, meaning bring your own chair, because the host had sold their dining set to make room for a larger Christmas tree. When Grandma had nowhere to sit, the host audaciously complained that everyone was being selfish for cluttering up the living room with their standing bodies instead of sitting on the floor like civilized people. 4. Trust is the foundation of any family, which is why it crumbled instantly when an uncle formally complained that the heritage breed organic turkey tasted like sadness in cardboard. It turned out the host had swapped the bird for a block of sculpted tofu without telling anyone, hoping to convert the family to veganism by stealth. The uncle was so offended by the culinary betrayal that he drove to a fast food drive-thru, bought a bucket of fried chicken, and ate it at the table as a form of greasy, passive-aggressive protest. 5. We all know that one relative who thinks technology is the devil, but one host took it too far by changing the Wi-Fi password to "interact with family" and refusing to give it out until dessert. The teenage cousins filed a collective grievance, not because they were addicted to TikTok, but because the host's house was in a reception dead zone and they couldn't Google how to perform the Heimlich maneuver when Grandpa started choking on a dry piece of fruitcake. Talk about a disconnect causing a literal safety hazard. 6. There is tacky, and then there is forensic-level tacky. A woman complained to the entire family group chat that her sister-in-law was a fraudulent gifter after unwrapping a blender. How did she know? Because she had left a distinctive scratch on that exact blender when she owned it 3 years prior before donating it to Goodwill. The complaint wasn't just about the regifting. It was that the sister-in-law didn't even have the decency to wipe off the old margarita residue before wrapping it up in dollar store paper. 7. Temperature wars are standard, but one guest lodged a serious complaint against a host who kept the thermostat locked at a bone-chilling 55 degrees. The host's reasoning wasn't to save money on the heating bill, but rather a misguided belief that the cold air would keep the fir tree needles from dropping prematurely. Guests were forced to eat dinner in parkas and mittens, shivering over their soup, while the host lectured them on how the crisp indoor climate was authentic to the North Pole experience they should be grateful for. 8. The spirit of giving apparently stops at the refrigerator door for some people. A confused guest shared that their aunt stood guard by the kitchen exit like a TSA agent, inspecting bags for unauthorized leftovers. She loudly complained that her family were scavengers for trying to take home a few slices of ham, insisting that leftovers were the host's tax for the effort of cooking. One cousin was actually forced to empty a Ziploc bag of stuffing back into the bowl while the aunt watched with crossed arms and a scowl. 9. In many American households, holiday football is a religion, which makes this complaint essentially a report of blasphemy. a host decided that the fourth quarter of a tie game was the perfect moment to turn off the television and force the entire family to participate in a reflective silence and gratitude circle. The ensuing uproar was so violent that the guests threatened to go to a sports bar, leading the host to complain that they loved men in tight pants more than their own flesh and blood. The answer, obviously, was yes. 10. Narcissism doesn't take a holiday break. A frantic cousin called the host in tears the morning of the party, complaining that the Christmas tree decorations were red and gold instead of pink. Why? Because she had secretly planned to use the family gathering as her personal gender reveal party without asking anyone. She was genuinely furious that the host hadn't psychically anticipated her need to pop a balloon in front of the roast beef, claiming the traditional holiday colors were stealing her thunder and ruining her unborn child's first social media moment. 11. Nothing says, "Welcome home," quite like humiliation. A 35-year-old accountant lodged a formal protest with his mother because he was relegated to the kids' table for the 10th year in a row. He wasn't just complaining about the lack of legroom or the plastic cutlery. His main grievance was that he was currently paying the mortgage on the very house where he was being forced to sit on a folding chair and color a placemat with a toddler named Braxton. 12. We have all heard of BYOB, but one family introduced BYOTP, or Bring Your Own Toilet Paper. A guest was absolutely appalled when the host sent out a pre-party email complaining that last year's guests used an aggressive amount of 2-ply and clogged the septic tank. This year, if you wanted to use the facilities, you had to bring your own roll or pay a $5 bathroom entrance fee, which the host was actually collecting in a jar by the bathroom door. 13. A grandmother filed a complaint with the entire family council because her grandson's new girlfriend refused to eat her famous ambrosia salad. The girlfriend politely declined because she was allergic to walnuts, but Grandma wasn't having it. She claimed the allergy was a liberal conspiracy designed to disrespect family traditions and demanded the poor girl eat at least one spoonful to prove she loved the family. The girlfriend ended up eating a roll in the car while Grandma sulked in the pantry. 14. You know the economy is tough, but charging for breakage is a new low. A guest complained on social media after receiving an invoice 2 weeks after Christmas for breaking a vintage ornament. The kicker was that the ornament was a generic glass ball from a bulk pack you can buy at Walmart for $3. The host, however, listed it as an irreplaceable heirloom with a replacement value of $75 plus a processing fee for the emotional distress of seeing shattered glitter on the rug. 15. Culinary crimes are common during the holidays, but one guest called the police, yes, the actual police, because the host served vegan ham without a disclaimer. The caller claimed it was false advertising and emotional fraud because he had been salivating for cured pork all day, only to bite into a loaf of smoky wheat gluten. The dispatcher had to gently explain that disappointing dinner entrees are a civil matter, not a criminal offense, though the guest strongly disagreed. 16. In a display of breathtaking greed, an uncle gave his nephew a scratch-off lottery ticket, and when the kid won $500, the uncle demanded the ticket back. He loudly complained that the gift was intended as a gag and that he never would have given it away if he knew it was a winner. When the family refused to hand over the cash, the uncle threatened to sue a 12-year-old for unjust enrichment before storming out with the spinach dip he brought. 17. A homeowner association president took her work home with her and enforced a strict no shoes, no socks policy to protect her new white carpet. Guests complained that they were forced to wear plastic surgical booties over their bare feet, which made everyone sound like a crinkling trash bag every time they walked to the kitchen. One guest said the combination of the plastic bags and the overheated living room created a foot sauna situation that smelled exactly as terrible as you are imagining right now. 18. The holiday spirit usually involves relaxation, but one host treated the gathering like a military boot camp. A sister-in-law complained that she was handed a printed schedule upon arrival. which included mandatory socializing blocks and a specific time slot for bathroom breaks to avoid congestion. When she tried to grab a cookie outside of the designated snack window, the host slapped her hand away and told her she was disrupting the flow of operations and ruining the logistical integrity of the evening. 19. A man was genuinely offended and complained to his wife that her family didn't worship him enough during the gift exchange. He had bought everyone expensive gadgets, expecting a hero's welcome, but when they simply said thank you instead of carrying him around the room on their shoulders, he threw a tantrum. He called the family ungrateful peasants and spent the rest of the night sulking in the garage, revitalizing his ego by revving his sports car engine, while everyone else ignored him. 20. We expect some dietary restrictions, but one guest arrived with a list of demands that would make a rock star blush. She complained that the turkey was cooked in the same oven as gluten, the water wasn't alkaline enough, and the air in the house was too stagnant. She demanded the host open all the windows in the middle of a blizzard to circulate the qi. When the host refused to freeze out the elderly relatives, the guest ate a raw sweet potato out of her purse and glared at everyone. 21. The battle for the thermostat is eternal, but one dad took it to a new level by installing a lockbox over the controls. His daughter complained that it was 60 degrees inside, but the dad insisted that cold air makes you digest faster. He claimed that if he turned up the heat, everyone would get sleepy and lazy, and he wanted a high-energy environment for charades. The guests eventually huddled around the open oven door like hobos warming their hands over a barrel fire. 22. A very confused guest complained that the host's dog was treated better than the humans. While the family was served dry turkey on paper plates, the golden retriever was eating a prime rib off fine china at the head of the table. The guest was reprimanded for asking for a refill on wine because it might startle the dog, who was apparently sensitive to the sound of liquid pouring. The dog also had the best spot on the couch, and no one was allowed to move him, forcing Grandma to sit on a beanbag. 23. Nothing kills a party vibe like a premature cleanup. A guest complained that the host started vacuuming under their feet while they were still eating dessert. The host wasn't just tidying up, she was spraying Windex on the table between bites and loudly sighing about the crumbs falling on the floor. She eventually just took the plates away from people who were still chewing, claiming she needed to load the dishwasher efficiently and couldn't wait for slow eaters to finish their pie. 24. A college student brought her new boyfriend home, and her father filed a private complaint that the boy had weak handshake energy. The dad was so disturbed by the lack of grip strength that he refused to let the boyfriend carve the turkey, fearing he might drop the knife and maim someone. He spent the entire dinner making passive-aggressive comments about firm grips and manly handshakes, until the boyfriend awkwardly crushed a soda can just to prove he had working flexors. 25. The award for the most delusional complaint goes to the aunt who was furious that the family didn't pause the entire gathering to watch her slideshow of vacation photos from 2004. She had brought a projector and a screen, expecting everyone to stop eating and drinking for an hour-long presentation on her trip to Branson, Missouri. When the family suggested watching football instead, she accused them of suppressing her artistic expression and claimed they were jealous of her worldly travels to the Midwest. 26. Parking disputes can turn ugly fast, but one guest actually called a tow truck on his own cousin for parking in Grandpa's spot. The problem was that Grandpa had passed away 5 years prior and wasn't using the driveway anymore on account of being in a cemetery. The cousin argued that the spot was sacred ground, and parking a muddy pickup truck on it was a spiritual violation that required immediate vehicular removal to restore the driveway's feng shui. 27. We all dread the dry holiday party, but one guest took matters into his own hands and then filed a complaint about reimbursement. After discovering the host was serving only sparkling grape juice, the guest ordered $300 worth of alcohol from a delivery app. When the host refused to pay the driver, the guest complained that the host was creating a hostile sobriety environment and that he couldn't be expected to tolerate his in-laws without a chemical buffer. 28. Mandatory fun is the worst kind of fun. A shy teenager complained to his parents that his aunt was forcing everyone to participate in a mandatory talent show before they were allowed to eat dessert. He didn't have a talent prepared, so the aunt made him stand in front of the fireplace and recite the Pledge of Allegiance while she filmed it for Facebook. He claimed it was a violation of his human rights and possibly the Geneva Convention. 29. Gift exchanges are breeding grounds for resentment, but this one involved a spreadsheet. A brother-in-law complained that there was a value discrepancy between the gift he gave and the gift he received. He actually pulled out a calculator and a printed receipt to prove he spent $45, while the socks he received were clearly from a discount bin priced at $10. He demanded the difference in cash or a store credit to the host's pantry. 30. Saying grace is a lovely tradition, but one hungry guest audibly groaned and filed a verbal complaint when the prayer crossed the 10-minute mark. The uncle leading the prayer had started listing every single global conflict and medical ailment of distant neighbors, effectively filibustering dinner. The guest pointed out that the gravy had developed a thick skin and the mashed potatoes were now a solid brick, arguing that God would have wanted them to eat while the food was still edible. 31. High-definition television has ruined us. A football fanatic complained that the host's television was embarrassingly small and lacked 4K resolution, making the game unwatchable. He was so distressed by the pixel density that he went out to his car, brought in a 32-inch monitor from his trunk, and set it up on the coffee table right in front of the main TV. He then complained that the glare from the Christmas tree lights was interfering with his contrast ratio. 32. Some people take homemade cooking very seriously. A grandmother threw a legitimate fit when she discovered the pumpkin pie was store-bought. She didn't just refuse to eat it, she complained that the host was poisoning the family with preservatives and accused her daughter-in-law of laziness. She then proceeded to go into the kitchen, bake a completely new pie from scratch while everyone waited, and complained the entire time that the host's flour was the wrong brand. 33. A guest lodged a complaint about the noise pollution at a gathering, specifically referring to the sound of children laughing and playing. The twist was that the complainer was the one who brought the children. She demanded the host set up a quiet room with soundproofing where her own kids could be stored so she could drink her wine in peace. When the host suggested she parent her own children, she claimed she was on holiday break from being a mother. 34. Brand loyalty runs deep, especially with soda. A riot nearly broke out when a guest complained that the host only had Pepsi products when everyone knows this is a Coke family. The guest claimed that drinking the blue can filth gave him hives and demanded someone drive to the gas station to rectify the beverage error. He spent the rest of the night drinking tap water out of a wine glass, looking like a martyr for the cause of high-fructose corn syrup. 35. Sleeping arrangements are often tricky, but one guest complained that the air mattress provided by the host was a death trap. He woke up in the middle of the night fully tacoed inside the deflated mattress, lying on the hard floor. He accused the host of sabotaging the valve to induce back pain as a punishment for his political views. The host simply pointed out that the guest had exceeded the weight limit by sleeping with his combat boots on. 36. A grown man refused to participate in the family photo and complained that the mandatory matching pajamas were an assault on his masculinity. The host had bought everyone onesies that looked like elves, complete with bells on the toes. The man argued that he was a senior vice president at a bank and could not risk photos of him in Jingle Bell fleece leaking to the internet. He compromised by wearing a suit and tie, looking like a lawyer serving the elves with an eviction notice. 37. The scent-sensitive guest is a common trope, but this one complained that the smell of the roasting turkey was too aggressive. She claimed the savory aroma of meat and herbs was triggering her chakras and demanded the host boil a pot of vinegar to neutralize the odor. The host refused to make the house smell like a salad dressing factory. so the guest sat on the porch with a clothespin on her nose, glaring through the window. 38. Microwaves are convenient, but not for the radiation police. A cousin complained loudly every time the microwave beeped, claiming that the microwaves were destroying the nutritional value of the green beans and mutating the family's DNA. She insisted that all food be reheated on the stove or in the oven, extending the dinner prep time by an hour. She stood guard by the appliance, unplugging it repeatedly to save the family from invisible radioactive death. 39. A homeowner complained that a guest had the audacity to use the decorative towels in the guest bathroom. You know, the ones that are embroidered and clearly not meant for human skin. The host found a damp towel and marched into the living room, holding it up like evidence at a murder trial, asking who dared to dry their hands on the Egyptian cotton. The culprit confessed, and the host made them use paper towels for the rest of the night. 40. The early bird complained that dinner was being served at 6 in the evening, which she considered midnight snacking. She argued that eating that late would disrupt her circadian rhythm and cause nightmares. She demanded to be served a separate plate at 4 in the afternoon. When the turkey wasn't done yet, she microwaved a hot dog she brought in her purse and ate it, while staring at the uncooked bird in the oven with pure judgment. 41. Audio control issues are a major trigger, but one guest actually filed a noise complaint against the host regarding the sonic ambiance. The guest claimed that the holiday playlist, which consisted of classic jazz, was pretentious elevator noise that was suppressing the party's dopamine levels. He hijacked the Bluetooth speaker and blasted a heavy metal cover of Silent Night at maximum volume, insisting that the family needed to rage in order to properly digest the turkey and stuffing. 42. We have all dealt with backseat drivers, but backseat chefs are worse. A mother-in-law stood in the kitchen doorway with a clipboard, yes, a literal clipboard, grading the host's cooking performance. She complained that the turkey basting intervals were irregular and that the potato peeling technique was wasteful. When she gave the final meal a C- due to lack of plating symmetry, the host threatened to serve her dinner in a dog bowl on the back porch. 43. Recycling is important, but shaming people during gift unwrapping is a mood killer. One eco-zealot guest audibly gasped every time a piece of glossy wrapping paper was torn, complaining that the family was murdering the planet for fleeting joy. She demanded that everyone save the tiniest scraps of paper to be reused next year. And when her nephew threw a bow in the trash, she fished it out and stuck it to his forehead as a badge of shame. 44. A guest brought a +1 that wasn't a romantic partner, but rather her spiritual life coach. The coach spent the entire dinner analyzing the family dynamics and complaining that the conversation was too surface level. He interrupted a story about a promotion to ask the uncle about his childhood trauma, and complained that the cranberry sauce represented repressed anger. The family eventually united in a common bond of wanting to throw the life coach into a snowbank. 45. Most people are happy to get leftovers, but one entitled guest complained that the host didn't provide commemorative take-home vessels. He was insulted that he was handed a washed-out Cool Whip tub for his turkey slices, claiming his refrigerator had a high-end aesthetic that couldn't be tarnished by recycled plastic. He actually demanded the host give him a glass Pyrex container, promising to return it eventually, which we all know is international code for never. 46. A very serious coffee drinker lodged a formal protest because the host was serving diner sludge from a big red tin instead of single-origin beans ground by hand. He complained that the caffeine content was insufficient to combat the post-turkey coma and was essentially a sedative. He proceeded to order a $20 coffee delivery for just himself, making the driver wait in the snow while he tested the temperature of his latte before accepting it. 47. Board games are supposed to be fun, but one uncle accused the host of using loaded dice during a game of Yahtzee. He complained that it was statistically impossible for the host to roll 3 full houses in a row and demanded an independent audit of the game equipment. He actually brought out a level to check if the dining table was tilted, claiming the slope was favoring the host's rolls and cheating him out of the family trophy, which was just a spray-painted pine cone. 48. A sibling rivalry exploded when a brother complained that the home movies being shown on the TV were biased propaganda. He argued that the selected clips only showed him crying or falling down as a toddler, while his sister looked like a perfect angel. He demanded the host edit out his awkward puberty phase immediately, or he would sue for defamation of character. The host just turned up the volume on the video of him tripping over a soccer ball. 49. The fashion police arrived in the form of a grandmother who complained that her granddaughter's sweater was too distressed. The sweater was a trendy design with intentional holes, but Grandma was convinced the girl was destitute. She loudly complained that it reflected poorly on the family's credit rating and tried to force a $50 bill into the girl's pocket, insisting she go to the mall immediately to buy clothes that didn't look like they were chewed by moths. 50. A guest complained that the host's driveway was a legal liability because there was a patch of slush near the mailbox. The guest was wearing suede stiletto boots in a blizzard and was furious that the host hadn't blow-dried the pavement for her arrival. She demanded someone carry her from the car to the front door like Cleopatra to avoid water damage to her footwear. Two cousins ended up dragging her on a sled while she screamed about dignity. 51. Privacy is scarce in a crowded house, but one guest locked the master bedroom door from the inside to take a nap during the gift exchange. When the host knocked to get their coat, the guest shouted through the door, complaining that the laughter and paper tearing were piercing their REM cycle. They emerged 2 hours later, refreshed, and criticized everyone else for looking tired and haggard, oblivious to the fact that they had held the host's bedroom hostage. 52. A guest misinterpreted a serving size as a personal attack. When the host gave her a modest scoop of mashed potatoes to leave room for other sides, the guest burst into tears and complained that the host was fat-shaming her with portion control. She claimed the small scoop was a passive-aggressive commentary on her weight and proceeded to pile a mountain of potatoes on her plate just to prove a point, creating a starchy tower of defiance that defied physics. 53. Etiquette is a lost art, but leaving a note about toilet paper orientation is next-level petty. A guest left a formal, handwritten complaint on the bathroom vanity, stating that the toilet paper roll was facing under instead of over. The note detailed how the under orientation causes unnecessary friction and bacteria transfer. The host found the note and promptly removed the toilet paper holder entirely, leaving the roll sitting on the back of the tank as a silent rebuttal. 54. A teenage cousin complained that the aesthetic of the Christmas tree was too chaotic for her TikTok background. She was genuinely upset that the family had used sentimental ornaments made of macaroni and felt instead of a color-coordinated designer theme. She demanded the family strip the tree and redecorate it with neutral tones and pampas grass so she could film a dance video without being embarrassed by her aunt's collection of ceramic cats. 55. We all know the clean your plate rule, but one host enforced it like a prison warden. A guest complained that they weren't allowed to have dessert because they left 3 Brussels sprouts on their dinner plate. The host physically blocked the pie table and said, "Vegetables first, sugar second," treating a 40-year-old tax attorney like a toddler. The guest tried to hide the sprouts in a napkin, but the host conducted a perimeter search and busted him. 56. Lighting is crucial for ambiance, but one guest wore sunglasses at the dinner table because he claimed the host's new LED bulbs were interrogation grade. He complained that the cool tone lighting was assaulting his retinas and washing out his complexion in selfies. He demanded the host switch back to incandescent bulbs immediately or install dimmer switches, claiming he couldn't enjoy his stuffing while feeling like he was under the spotlight in a police lineup. 57. A helpful gesture backfired when a guest decided to reorganize the host's pantry in the middle of the party. The host found her labeling spice jars and complained that the kitchen was chaotic. The guest then filed a counter-complaint, stating that the lack of alphabetization in the dry goods section was a sign of a cluttered mind, and that she was doing the host a favor by throwing away expired canned goods that were actually just bought last week. 58. A distant cousin complained that the family gathering was too functional and lacked the dramatic flair she was expecting. She literally told the host that she was disappointed because no one got drunk and started a fistfight, meaning she would have nothing interesting to tell her therapist the following week. She felt robbed of content and suggested that next year they invite the estranged uncle just to spice things up and create some necessary trauma. 59. We all appreciate a good toast, but one guest lodged a complaint when the host's speech went over the 30-minute mark. The host wasn't just wishing everyone a Merry Christmas. He was reading a 20-page manifesto about his recent colonoscopy and his political views on local zoning laws. The guest complained that his arm had gone numb from holding up his glass and that the champagne had gone warm and flat during the lecture. 60. A tech-savvy nephew complained that the Yule log video playing on the television was fake news. He was genuinely irritated that the crackling sound effect was on a loop and didn't match the visual of the logs burning. He argued that the lack of synchronization was psychologically damaging and demanded they put on a real fire, despite the fact that the house had an electric fireplace and lighting real wood would have burned the place down. 61. Shower schedules are tight with a full house, but one guest complained that the water pressure in the guest bathroom was insulting to her hair follicles. She claimed that the low-flow shower head was a personal attack on her vanity and prevented her from achieving holiday volume. She actually asked the host to call a plumber on Christmas Eve to remove the flow restrictor so she could properly rinse her conditioner. 62. A serious bourbon drinker complained that the ice cubes provided were cloudy and amateur. He lectured the host on how the trapped oxygen in the ice would melt too quickly and dilute the flavor profile of his whiskey. He demanded artisanal clear spheres and refused to drink until someone boiled water and froze it specifically for him, forcing everyone else to endure a chemistry lesson while they just wanted a cold soda. 63. During a game of Pictionary, a guest accused the host of cultural bias because the word to draw was snowblower. The guest, who was from Florida, complained that the prompt was regionally discriminatory and gave the northern relatives an unfair advantage. He demanded the card be thrown out and replaced with something universal like palm tree, and threatened to flip the table if he didn't get a point for drawing a shovel with wheels. 64. A parent brought their unruly child to the party and then complained that the host wasn't disciplining them. The mom sat on the couch drinking wine while her kid smashed ornaments, and when the host finally asked the kid to stop, the mom got offended. She complained that it takes a village, and that the host failed to provide a structured environment for her free-range child, essentially blaming the host for her kid's destruction of the living room. 65. A guest complained that the host failed to provide valet services during a snowstorm. When it came time to leave, the guest was appalled that his car hadn't been brushed off and de-iced by the host. He argued that a good host ensures the safe departure of their guests and stood in the doorway, buttoning his coat, waiting for the host to go out in the freezing cold and scrape his windshield while he stayed warm inside. 66. The health nut didn't just bring her own food. She complained that the host's vegetables were cooked in butter, which she called artery sludge. She claimed that the host was trying to kill the family for the inheritance by serving rich food and demanded to see the ingredient labels for everything on the table. She spent the meal reading the nutritional facts of the dinner rolls out loud to shame people for their carbohydrate intake. 67. A guest complained that the wrapping paper used on her gift was too cheap and ruined the unboxing experience. She noted that the paper tore too easily and lacked the satisfying resistance of premium foil wrap. She actually told the host that using dollar store paper devalued the gift inside and suggested that next year, The host should watch some YouTube tutorials on professional Japanese gift wrapping techniques to show some respect. 68. Acoustic issues returned when a guest complained that the laughter of the other guest was piercing. She wasn't complaining about the volume, but the pitch of the happiness. She claimed that her sister-in-law's laugh was a specific frequency that triggered her migraines and asked the host to implement a hushed tones policy for the rest of the evening. The party ended with everyone whispering like they were in a library to avoid setting off the alarm. 69. Finally, the ultimate complaint came from a guest who was furious that the host didn't have a gift receipt for a homemade sweater. Grandma had knitted a sweater by hand, spending dozens of hours on it, and the grandson complained that he couldn't return it to Amazon for store credit. He asked Grandma for the yarn receipt so he could maybe return the raw materials to the craft store, proving that some people are simply beyond redemption. And that wraps up the list of the most insane, entitled, and absolutely ridiculous complaints ever filed at a family gathering. Now I need to know, what is the single pettiest thing a relative has ever said to you over a turkey dinner? Tell me the story in the comments because I read all of them. If you survived this video without calling the police, smash that like button and subscribe for more madness.